Alright, planning secure buildings. Security building occupant asks if the overview of the 2001 terrorist attack in New York City, World Trade Center, and the Pentagon of the 1995 bombing in Oklahoma, and some of the Alfred P. Moorhen Federal, the official bill within 2015 Washington Naval Yard shooting. 2016, off the scene of the Ohio State University vehicle ramming attack shock nation made the Americans aware of the need of the better of the protect with the occupant's success. As says public gatherings building with the human aggressor, for the disgruntled, with the employed, with the criminal, vain with the lone active shooter, with the terrorist, with the 2001 terrorist activity, demonstrated with the country's vulnerability to wide range threats, with the heightened public concern of the safety workers, occupants within all buildings, type of the public gathering, space for the main federal agency to respond with these concerns, have adopted the overarching philosophy to provide appropriately with the cost-effective protection building occupants. Basic components of the physical security meet the address of the exposed for the threats of the establishment, protect the parameters of the prevention of the progressive collapse, of the design of the debris, mitigating facade, save the isolation of the internal explosion of the threats of master may of the evade of the detection through screening station may enter the public space for the private screen with the protection of the emergency evacuation rescue recovery system of the other establishing protected perimeter protective measure for the generally achieve the principle of the structural design dynamics of non-linear material response, directorial detailing space planning with the operational security life safety measures should be considered the taker of the physical security measure for the development of comprehensive building security design. Effective implementation of physical security measures will require the improvement of the blast engine for the Inner Security Council with the onset of the program favor the early ongoing coordination between the blast engine and the instructional engine of the Security Council with the engineer design team. Critical with providing optimal design for both opening and inviting public complaint with the security requirement. Security standards, addition with the theme of the risk of the reduction publication provide with the background information performing the risk assessment and guidance for the protection of the design approach are different branches. Federal government developed the design criteria for the protection of the federal facilities. The most prominent of the agency direct design criteria for the Interagency Security Committee with the Risk Management Process, the Department of Defense Unified Facility Criteria, the Department of Veterans Affairs Physical Security Design Manual, the Department of State Oversee Buildings Organization, design standard that each of the government agencies consider the effect of the terrorism exposed to the events of the facility with the protection of their occupants for the overview of each of the agency design criteria is protected below. Interagency Security Committee with the membership of the Interagency Security Committee with the consent of the 185 senior level executive of the 54 federal agents of the department in accordance with Executive Order 1297-7, modified Executive Order 1328-6, the Interagency Security Committee primary members represent 21 federal agencies shared with the Department of Homeland Security. Interagency Security Committee underwent with a major provision with April 2010 and had minor amendments in August 2013 and again in January 2016. Most recent revision of the Internet Agency Security Council Committee with the compendium risk-based approach composed system, Interagency Security Committee policy standard best practice, the risk management process, federal facility agency, Interagency Security Committee standard of November 2006. The note, the three appendices of the document official use only will only be distributed outside of the government, but they only need to know based on the risk management process, the federal facility appendix A, risk management process, federal facility appendix B, and the risk management process of federal facility appendix C. Risk management process standard provide facility security level the base of the characteristic facility with the occupants of those health, 5 factors, mission critical, symbolism, facility population, facility size, and threats to tenant with the agency quantified with the determine the facility security level, facility security committee with the multi-tenant with the facilities consider the representative of the federal tenants with the facility with the security organization, federal security level is established. The design base for the threat is documented with the provide with the design base for the threat, the scenario, the baseline threat, and an analytical base for the threat, targeted effective attractiveness outlook of 33 undesirable events of the range of the aircraft, the weapons, of the workplace, and violence for the air for all heads of the approach of the provide with a comprehensive review of the potential impact of the violence of the facility faces of the provides guidance to assess the risk management process standard that provide with the overall base of the threat of risk assessment, the facility security committee responsible addressing facility specific security issues, approving the implementation security measure and practices. The implementation may be the combination of the operation physical security measures based on the facility security level, the level of protection of the deemed both appropriate and achievable of the facility process for the documentation of the tabulates with the requirement of the individual security criteria categories relative to the desired level of protection of the security criteria categories are further correlated with the additional appendix information specified undesirable events, protective measures intended to address presentation of the protective design criteria helps to illustrate the all hazard risk-based approach. approach. General Services Administration, the Interagency Security Council, the PSC, risk-based interpretation, protective design consultant with the established consultant with the Intersecurity Committee with the PSC across building portfolio. General Services Administration developed the General Services Administration facility security requirements for explosive device applicable to the facility security level 3 and 4. GSA interpretation Security Committee with physical security criteria. August 2011. The document provides specify the facility security requirements of explosive devices for the facility security levels 3 and 4. The guidance of the include with the calculation blast load of the material strength factor with the flexure of the shear respond with the criteria of the glaze system respond with the criteria of face size performance structural performance progressive collapse of the resistance. Department of Defense, Department of Defense, the life of the unified criteria established for the facility of the construction requirement of the two overarching security and engineering unified criteria with the ASR unified criteria 402001 DoD security engineering planning manual and the UFCs 401001 DoD minimum anti-terrorism standard for the building DoD security the engineering planning manual with the starting point with the basis of the risk of the two and the value asset for the drive of the application for the DoD minimum anti-terrorism standard building the additional protect the construction over and above the minimum standard of the planning manual implements risk-based on building model with the ranks 14 rating factor to determine the level of protection required with each of the 13 aggressive threats. Those rating of the factors include the asset value, the asset replaceable, the military impact, the loss, political sensitivity, related value, location, public profile, the accessibility, availability of the environmental terrorist activities. All the factors for this scored and determine the level of protection regardless of the risk of the value of the asset for the Department of Defense has directed the occupier of the facility must receive the baseline with the protection employed with the contract of dependents in order to protect against the mass casualty. Therefore, asset with a score less than 0.5 asset value and the threat likelihood must only comply with the baseline protective requirements of UFCs 401001 DoD minimum anti-terrorism standard building. These two unified facility criteria other supporting security engineering unified UFCs can be found with the whole building design 5 federal facility criteria Department of Defense section. For installation of the lease for the DoD facility, the DoD must follow the Interagency Security Committee for the risk of the management process of the federal facility. The exemption intent to reduce the cost of the base facilities, limiting relocation aligned with the federal agency security requirements to make it easier to obtain the commercial lease space. Department of Defense Veteran Affairs. The Veteran Affairs conduct the assessment of the representative of the facility of the campus of both the urban and rural area to identify the vulnerabilities common to the most facility with the base of the finding of these assessment of the Veterans Affairs develop the physical security design manuals or for mission critical for the facility's life safety protective facilities. The document outlines the most practical and cost effective protective measure for the address of both natural and man-made hazards which for the occupants are exposed to the design manuals address site conditions, building entry for the exit of the functional areas of the building envelope of the building structure for the utilities, building services, the building system, and the security systems. Department of State. The Department of State Security with the criteria for the international facility with the document for the 2014 with the oversee of the building organization for the design standard control of the unified unclassified information approach for the Department of State with the requirements of the enforcement of both the anti-ram and anti-personal standoff distance provided to be read with the mitigation force entry with the ballistic resistant and FSA provide with a greater moment of resisting frame the inherently resistant to the progressive collapsible design structure that resist the blast induced by base shear of both the magnitude of the design base for the threats for the performance criteria of the Department of State of the building, generally much more with the area radius corresponding requirements imposed with the other government agencies. Guidance of the commercial building. Although there are numerous government and security with the criteria standard, there are no comparable to documents of the commercial building in America. The Society of Civil Engineering there undertook with the task to develop the consensus-based blast standard that identified with the minimum playing with the design construction assessment requirement of the new and existing building subject for the effect of the accidental and malicious explosion, including principles establishing appropriate threat matter, parameter level of protection, loading, and the analyst methodology material with the detail and the test procedure document does not precisely requirement with the guideline mitigation progress collapsible to other potential post-blast behaviors in life with the government standard. The American Society of Civil Engineers standards are written structural engineer with the specified information pertaining to the design and detail of the blast resistant structure facade system. Crime prevention through the environmental design. Crime prevention through environmental design, proving the methodology only enhance the performance of the security, the safety measures, but also of the aesthetic, the value of the engineering. Crime prevention through environmental design utilizes 4 primary overlap of the principle of the natural failure, the natural access control of the temperature, and territorially maintenance of the natural surveillance valve of the parameters of the Criminals do not wish to observe the placing legitimate eyes on the street, but also providing window of the view of the lighting, increase the perceive the offensive, the reduce the fear of the bona fide of the occupant, the visitors, as well as lessening the reliance on the only camera surveillance, and new natural access for the control of the supply, physical security, operational measures of the walls and fences, ravines, ever hedges of the divine sight boundaries, channel legitimate occupants of visitors, designated entrances, to reduce access point for the escape route for the territorial, involve the strategy to project with the sense of the ownership of the spaces, such that it becomes easier to identify with the intruders because they don't seem to belong, with clearly differentiate the public, semi-public, and private space with the use of the signs, fences, pavement, and treatment, art, flowers, and, for example, the way to express the ownership of the main with the key element of the zero lines of the site with the surveillance and the retainment of the defensiveness, physical elements, protect sense of the care of the ownership together with the principle of the crime prevention and environmental design, increase the effectiveness of the operational, technical, physical safety development, thereby lessening equipment of the operating costs. For total design efficiency and cost effectiveness, security and safety of the crime prevention through engineering environmental design measures must be applied beginning with the project security for the program and useful practice to identify the security design requirements necessary to stay outside of the stakeholders concerned. Application of standard buildings as evident overview of the different existing standards above the currently no universal code standard that apply with the public and private sector buildings. However, the most designers that agree with the security issue that must be addressed with the integrated design process with an understanding of the impact of the goals of the design objectives. This will ensure quality of the building, effective security design based on the threat of the attack, depending on the building type of the accessible level of risk. The decision made with the recommendation for the comprehensive threat of this vulnerability assessment risk analysis appropriate the countermeasures should be implemented to protect people and asset and mission. That sometimes the attack of the threats of the consider the unauthorized entry of the trespass for the force of coveted covert will include vehicle ramming threats, inside threats for the explosive threats, stationary move the vehicle to deliver the mail bomb with the packaging bomb with the ballistic threats, small armed, high-powered rifle to drive by shootings, etc. Weapons of mass destruction, chemical, biological, radiological, distributive threats for the hoax and false reports, malicious attempt to disrupt operation, cyber information security threats, supervisal control acquisition, or SCADA system threats relevant to the Rule of 8 to have that mechanical electrical system control, other utility system that are required to operate with many of the function in the building, multiple tactic threats, unauthorized entry of the force of the cover, the protect the facility, the asset for the unauthorized person, the important of the part of the any of the security systems, so in terms of the include compound facility control of the control parameter, defense of the boulders, anti-ram barrier of the traffic control, remote control gates, anti-ram hydraulic drop arm of the hydraulic barrier of the parking control system, force entry, ballistic resistant of the door, windows, walls, roofs, barrier protection, man passage opening with the area of the 96 square inch of the touch as air vents and utility opening culverts, mechanical locking system, eliminating hiding spaces, hiding places with a multiple layer protection system parameter, intrusion of the detection system, clear zone video, CCTV, surveillance technology, alarms, detection devices, motion, autistic and infrared, personal identification system, access control, fingerprints, biometrics and ID cards, credential management, tailgating policy, primary, secondary credential systems, protection, information, data of the acoustic shielding of the electronic conservative security device, hostile electronic environmental computer screen, shield for secure access of the equipment network, hard and satellite telephone systems. Inside threats, one of the most serious threats come from the person that have authorized to the facility that may include the disgruntled employee with the person who have the game with active with the normal need with the contractor support personnel. Mitigate inside threats. Sometimes items include implement personal reliability, person with the background check, limited with the control access for the area facility. Compartmentalize the building campus of the two-man rule with this active the restricted area video, CCTV surveillance technology, explode the threats of the stationary, move the vehicle to deliver the mail bomb, package bombs, swivel threats, have the men, the terrorist weapon, the toy with the size for the may include with the large amount of the explosive required with the delivery with the vehicle, have the smaller amount of the introduce with the facility through the mail with the package, similar handling, secured, unsecured with the normally best for the defense with the provide with the defendant with the distance between the threat location and the asset for the protect with the typically called the standoff the distance and the standoff is not available to insufficient prevent direct contact would reduce the blast force for reaching the protected assets. Structural hardening may require with the introduce early with the design profit that may be done effectively cost effective manner with the introduce locate late with the design with the retrofitting of the existing facilities such as measures that provide economic difficulty to justify some items considered including qualified security blast consultant the professional of the program forward to provide defending stand of the vehicle to warm weapons of the reusing ready with the certified barrier. This is anti-ram fencing with the boiler to reuse the reinforced steel furniture with the plan with the planet's walls, lighting strand with the natural and man-made elements. This is stormwater elements, berms, dikes, trees, maps by site with layout strategy for the parking area of the roadway loading docks, or the location couple the vehicle with a critical asset with the location straight with the security protocol with the policy procedure vehicle inspections. Considerable structural handling with the hazard mitigation design with the touch for the ductile framing with the capable of withstanding the abnormal load with the preventing and progressive collapse of the protective glazing, strengthening walls and roof, the other facility component with the critical asset that cannot be distributed with the emergency response asset the provided redundant physical separation, critical infrastructure, AVAC, utility system, water, electrical, fuel, the communication, ventilation, provide refrigeration, evacuation. Consider the plan for suicide bomb and confer with the authorities we have to provide, previous experience with the provide, define, Bennett, standoff with hand-carried weapons, anti-claiming, climb fencing, barrier, thorny plants, natural surveillance, routine occupancy for the uninstructed space, for the electronic surveillance, intrusion detection, territorial using defined space, natural access control of the exterior of the interior, pedestrian layout, strategy, security protocol for the policy procedure, the visit management, personnel packaging, screen, etc. Consider handling mail, alternate remote. Consider handling mail in alternative remote location not attached to the building, wing, or building, and dedicated with the AVAC system lane. Limit contamination damage of the main building, considering loading dock for the structural head, don't attach for the main building, have the limited contamination damage of the main building. Ballistic threats. Threats include the active retrieval of the random derived device shooting the main high-powered rifle, activity directed for the specific target of the facility of the assassination, important the quality of the potential risk to establish the appropriate level of protection. Most common ballistic protection rating systems include the Underwater Laboratory, National Institute of Justice, the White Laboratory, the ASTM, and International. Materials are rated based on their ability to stop specific ammunition projects outside of the velocity. Some items include obstruction, concealment, the screen of the youth of the tree, with the hedge of the berms, with the fencing wall, with the less of the critical building, ballistic resistant, with the rated material of the product, with locating critical assets away from the direct line, with the side through the windows and doors, minimize number inside of the window, physical energy absorption, screen with the solid fence of the walls, with the earth and parapets, with the provide opaque window for the window treatment, with the reflective the coating, shade with the drive of the drapes, decrease sight lines, avoid sight line with the acid of the vents and skylights, other building openings, the use of fire, the other door or shields, technique for the both observation doorway with the outside location void, main entrance to the building, the critical aspect of the perimeter, uncontrolled vantage point, secured compartmentalization facility, and limited internal mobility, most notification security system, facility access control, CCTV. Weapons of mass destruction, chemical, biological, radiological, commonly referred to as weapons of mass destruction. These threats generally have a low probability of the occurrence of the consequence of the activity that may be severe. These are delivered hand mail with the result of the accident will leave the toxic industrial agent with the fulfilling protective the facility against the threats that may not be with you. Due to the fuel exemption for the shell of the common sense for the low cost measure that can improve resisting the reduce the risk for the trouble the intent items and consider the protective ventilation pathways of the building, control of access air inlet with air wall and water systems. Locate inner intake wall with the probe of the ground level with the protective the direction, detection, filterization, havoc system, air intake, the water system. Provide emergency havoc shut off with the control of segregation ports of the building spaces. Consider positive pressurization to keep the contamination out of the facility. Provide with the emergency notification system. Facility orderly respond with evacuation. Void building facility. Location depressions where the air could be stagnant. Provide access control of the mechanical room. Provide chemical, biological monitoring apparatuses. Cybersecurity protection for the information for the infrastructure, for the control system, target system that had brought with the increase of the attention for the network connected for the facility for the building, opinion for the operation for the maintenance vendors for the organizational business IT system, the facility building control systems. Buildings are increasing relying with the building control system with the communication technology may be enabled to feed with the internet. These systems that provide with the critical service of the building all allow for the building to meet with the functional operational need of the building occupant. They can also be easily targeted active people of malicious intent. Attackers can exploit the system of the game the unauthorized access for the facility be used in century with the point traditional information technology system to have the cause physical destruction building equipment exposed to the organization significant financial obligation like certain and eradicated malware to recover the cyber event. The facility building such control such as the building automation, the energy management system, physical security access control system, fire alarm system, beginning with the conservation potential hacking point with the organization. These control systems are referred to the operational technology with the combination of the IT protocol with the TCP and UDP, but also with the use of control of the unique protocol Mobus BACnet, LAN talk NP3 with the communicating with the sensitive device actuators. The IT is about the OT is about the control machine. OT is increasingly becoming the IP base for the internet. Everything with the small grid, small city, with small buildings, smart cars, Smart grid, smart cities, smart buildings, smart cars, refining the boundary with the IT and OT. As IT and OT systems are converged, so do they have the risk, vulnerability, hacking of the OT system point, entry pivoting of the network, taking control of the other system's assets. Alright, table 4, comparing the IT and OT system to the information and operational technology. Purpose of the transaction provided information control, monitoring, physical access, process equipment, architecture, and enterprise with wide infrastructure applications. Operate OT and event-driven real-time and embedded with hardware, software, custom, IT interface with the GUI, web browser, terminal, keyboard, operational technology, electromechanical, sympathy, actuated, coded display with the handheld devices. IT ownership, CIO and IT, OT, engineering technicians, operator managers, connected the IT, corporate network IP base, and operation technology control networks, hardwired, twisted pair over the IP base, and role supporters, people, and OT controls machines. The National Institute stand for the technology primary for the IT cyber stand for the guideline of the NIST SP 837 and the NIST SP 853 publication of the SAN Stop 20 control of the ISO standard that may have been used with both the government industry with the IT best practices for many years. Control system cyber exploit with increase the number of the complexity on the OT, operational technology side of the ISA 99 with the NIST SP 882 with the version 2 of the industrial control security system. The industrial control security system security guide with the provide with the stream of the guide with the industrial control standard systems. Industrial control systems or operational technology have the traditional but not receive the same level of security scrutiny, but it's the information technology system. However, the malware, the shortcomings of the duplicate and flame are now specifically designed to infect with the operational technology component of the device, the firmware, projected file will level and inject false command with the spoof, the operator with the human machine interface, console is set with the command with the control of the channel with the extra affiliate with the technical specification, flooring, drawings, etc. with the create bonnets and the physical destroy equipment with the other information technology. Underlying fundamental of the concept of the NIST SP 882 revision 2 of the industrial control security guide with the concept of the inbound protection with the outbound protection. All control systems should be separate with the network with multiple levels of DMZ with the sub-networks. Depending on the building control system, WBG cybersecurity resource pages, member of the primary with the building community, but also with the additional information all of the control system, the workshop, with the training, all facility building owners of the project management, the engineering security staff highly encouraged to understand the basic principle of the NIST SP 882 revision 2, known as how the Department of Homeland Security CSE2 tools understand with how the shutdown, Kali Linux, Summary, STFU, other tool works, penetrated the testing primarily to adopt with the new acquisition procurement process into the organization where the information technology community has also the 2 decades to learn, but they implement cyber security. Operational technology community will also have the accelerated learning curve that will need to work closely with the senior management and IT and other stakeholders properly cyber secure their assets. Or every building owner should have the building cybersecurity strategy with the following key documents to cover the IT and OT assessment system, security plan of action, milestone, information technology concept of the operation, incident with communication procedure, security audit plan. Department of Homeland Security ICS cert with the maintain with the vulnerability with the alert for the control system, published cybersecurity evaluation tool, which is free with the chart of the organization, contained with the stream of the guides with the reference of the network diagram tool with compliance evaluation can generate system security plan and the other key documents. Another effort being led to the Department of Homeland Security Interagency Security Committee. The security government asked for the combined traditional security and information technology white paper. The document outlined with the risk management framework process applied with the physical security, such as the closed circuit video equipment and video system, intrusion detection system, electronic physical access system, and key recommendations bring with the physical security facility engineer managed IT system integrated with the property owner of the table to conduct the assessment and development of the system security plans. Department of Defense Security, Cybersecurity, the design guidance of the tactic for the technique perceived. The DoD has adopted the risk management framework from the all information technology, operational technology net with a component of the device that include the facility related to the control system. Department of Defense Unified Facility Criteria UFC 401016 Cybersecurity Facility Related Control System published in September 2016 described the requirement of incorporating cybersecurity design with the facility related with the control system, fine process-based risk management framework, sustainability, suitability with the control system, system impact rating that apply with the planning, with the design, construction, renovation, repair with the new existing facility, and installation with the result of the Department of Defense real property assets regarding funding sources of the publications made with the NIST SB 882 R2, generic enough so that it can be used in any organization. Department of Defense Advanced Cyber Industrial Control System Tactics Technique with the procedure, the step-by-step guide with how to detect, mitigate, recover the facility recovery control system has been attacked, compromised, established with the requirement of the jump kit rescue with the TD that has full mission capability baseline configuration, publication generic and so enough such that it can be used in an organization. Alright, the DoD ESTCP Cyber Security Guidelines website with a comprehensive one-stop shop with cybersecurity guidance. The ESTCP FRCS projects will be required to meet the RMF, the requirements of the demonstrator, the capability meeting server and cybersecurity criteria required to obtain authorization to operate the DoD information network of the site, provided with the step-by-step instruction to create the basic risk assessment in planning design phase, the create of the test and development environmental design construction sequence, the table to identify with the deliverables, expect with the time frame and such, how to perform facility acceptance testing with the construction phase, with the conduct of the full site acceptance testing, including the penetration testing, system turnover templates, and resource tools. Alright, related issues. Building design mitigate with the potential progressive collapse. Progressive collapse loosely defined with the situation where localized failure of the primary structural elements of the collapse of the adjacent structure of the elements with the propagate with the disproportionate collapse of the structure of the ASES, E7, then progressive collapse is defined with the spread of the initial local failure with the element of the element that eventually resolve the collapse of the entire structure, disproportional large part of it. Initial failure of the damage could be the number of the different causes for them, include with the natural man-made hazards, phenomena of applicable with the structure of the appreciable side with the type of the construction, the construct of the greatly of the taller structure, the proportional mechanism, the typical vertical, the design guideline prevention of the progressive collapse, the typical take of the right with the independent approach, regardless of the initial cause intended, develop the inherent robustness, the continue with the destructive, the resist the rest of the propagation of the failure of the example, the design of the structural frame and is to resist the propagation of the damage of the loss of the primary vertical load of the carrying element, such as the load-bearing wall of the column, and the typical threat, independent of the approach of the providing the resistant approach of the assume with the complete damage of the structural element being considerably enhanced the structure to prevent the disproportionate spread of the damage by assuming the loss for the single vertical load carrying element at the key location of the structure. The design can reduce potential progressive collapse should it mitigate the event and cover the design approach requirements as presented. Department of Defense UFC 402-303, the design building resist progressive collapse. And General Service Administration 2013 alternative path to the LNS, the design guidelines of progressive collapse of resistance. Each of these guidelines provides method to analyze measure for the accessibility of the meet the criteria of the progressive collapse, the guidelines, GSA, and unified facility criteria of the currently most complete sets of the criteria of the terms of the providable to give the guidance of the designer. Discussions of role progressive collapse mitigation for measure for the secure buildings can be found on the resource page of blast safety building envelope of the design building resistant explosives threats. Crash-related barrier to the applicable standard with successful security site plan involve the establishment and enforcement of the current control of the perimeter of the control perimeter may act to prevent the threats for the transport vehicle for the pedestrian with the entry for the standoff zone for the protected facility with the control perimeter that is designed to stop the vehicle to entering with the protected side to have offered with the crash the anti-ram rated with the crash rated with the barrier site with a typical test for the engineer side with the stop of the certain vehicle. The vehicle side with the vehicle speed with the protecting the distance with the typical determined base with the accessibility side with the topographic alignment with the surrounding roadways that require the stand off the distance. Crash rated barrier to take the various form and include the boulders with the able to reinforce fence of the planter's vehicle access that require the secure the side of the parking. Maintenance emergency deliverables active barrier that may employ, but these include the plate barriers, the wedge barrier with the retractable boulder. Case for more discussion regarding crash rated barrier. Some of the UFC with the 4022202 selection application vehicle barriers. Bullyard receipt page. Resource page. The government crash test standing for the evaluating barrier system ASCM F2656, the F2656M. Senior test method of the crashing test vehicle security barrier with the standard replaced with the Department of State with the diplomatic state security stand with the STD 0201 revision ASTM F2656 F2656M, including impact with addition, designation, crash rating, various testing vehicles, small passenger trucks, pickup truck with medium duty trucks, heavy goods vehicles traveling 40 to 60 miles with the example of the impact with addition, design with the H5 with the designation, heavy goods vehicles traveling 50 miles an hour, similar CPU and M ratings provided with the other test vehicle types. Integration, security, and historic preservation. Building site, facade, structural, operational core of the building required with the comply with the security standard with the historical preservation goal of the channel, particularly with the channel with the careful planning and understanding of the historical preservation object with the necessary and in order to the requirements of both the discussion and method, the retrofit of the method that have been skillfully employed with the meet with the security requirements existing with the building, provide the retrofitting existing building, resist explosive threats, and resource the page of the specific challenges being encountered with applying these retrofit methodologies to historical buildings, including lack of the documentation existing construction offering building technology at the time of the construction, illustrating the difficulty with the existing system and limitation modification that can be made due to the historical preservation restriction. Integrating security and sustainability provides sustainable design to meet with all the facility requirements that often challenge the limited resources are not always feasible to provide with the most secure for the facility, accurate, explosive for the design, energy, efficient for the building, and envelope for the planning of the concept through the development of the construction of the document. It is important that all the project design stakeholders work imperative to ensure the balanced design successful decision. Designs must be considered with the complete design objective to make the best selection. They apply with them as well with the site, but as well with the building and the entire suitability site design. And CPTED, consider the concert with each of the integrated security fire protection. Care should be taken to implement the physical security measure for the fire protection, so force of the access to the site of the building occupants for the adequate means for the energy, emergency ingress for the comply with the National Fire Protection Association Code 4101 GSA, conducted study development recommendation, design strategy that have both security and the fire safety design, specifically the issue of the emergency ingress, the egress through blast resistant window of the system, study with the training would have developed and information available to the ARA firefighting force ability and tutorial. Integrated security system. There has been a general tour of the integrating various standalone security systems, the integrating system, the remote location, integrating security system, and other systems that communicate with the fire, emergency status management, closed CCTV with the fire mass notification system, burglar alarms have the entire integrated form of the foundation access control. Emerging trend is not integrated with the security system, facility personnel operating, perceived the by improving, involved with the facility stakeholder, the program and stage, through the life of the project, the behavioral base for the policy of the can be successfully integrated with the security of the system forces. Blast design versus seismic design. Seismic blast resistant design shall be the common and analytical method of the performance of the based design and philosophy, except the variable level of damage respond with the variable dynamic excitation. Both design approaches recognize the cost prohibitive to provide comprehensive protection against the conceivable events, the appropriate level of protection, lessen the risk of the mass casualties, provide reasonable cost for the seismic design, blast resistant design approach with the benefit of the risk assessment, evaluate functional criticality, occupancy, site with addition design feature of the building. While they are more predictably natural, evident most escape of the man-made have the explosive threats for the future for the variable, the likely with the different with the explosive threats for the path with another fundamental difference with the between seismic and blast events with acceptable the design limited the of the earthquake are more predictable and effective the more structurally effective the blast events. Owners may be willing to accept the different level of risk level that leads to different events. This may translate in the difference acceptable design limited to define and allowable the formation ductility other functions. Both seismic and design and resistant design approach for the consider the time varying the nature for the loading function of the response of the building and earthquake loads with the global nature of the base motion, the typical of the applied with the uniformly over the foundation of the building, the seismic motion of the induced of the force of the proportional building mass. Blast loading of the uniformly applied with all the portion of the building players of the structure of the components the closest to the facing pointed to them in detonation experience with higher load than component with a greater distance not facing the point of detonation. Structural mass contributes to the internal resistance of the local versus global nature base and blast loading and seismic loading and analogies, including concept of blast induced the base shear that must be applied with great care that they may be construed to provide false sense of protection. Building configuration characteristics such as size, shape, and location, structural elements, important issue for the both seismic and ballistic resistance. Design. The manner in which the forces are distributed throughout the building strongly affected the configuration. Seismic force and proportional to the mass. Building increase with the demand with the inheritable resistant plate with the significant role of the design structure review for the response with the blast loading. Structural design to resist the seismic force benefit with the height of the base ratio of the balance resistant. Symmetrical plans, uniform section of the elevation placement and shear wall lateral placing maximum load. Torsional resistance short span of the direct load path of the uniform floor heights. With ballistic-resistant structures share many of the same attributes, the reason for the doing so with the difference. For example, the seismic examination and due for the torsional response of the modes of the structure, with the re-entry of the core, with the condition of the provide pocket of the blast pressure may reflect on the adjacent wall of the amplified blast effect with a similar flow arcade of the provide. Arcades produce overhangs of the re-entrant corners, created localized concentration blast pressure. Exposed over the floor slab of the uplifted the same design. Adjacent structural elements suffer the effect of the pounding of the two buildings hit one another on the response of the base of the motion. Adjacent structure of the design dense urban environmental vulnerable amplification blast effect due to the multiple reflection blast waves promulgates sort of the detonation geology of the site that has a significant influences seismic low motion low structure the surrounding geology site of the influences side of the blast of the crater of the retroactivity reflectivity of blast wave of the ground surface. On element level, the plastic deformation demands of on both seismic load and structure of the blast load structures require attention for the details. Most similar detailed approach can be achieved with the ductile performance structural elements subject to both blast seismic loading phenomena. Constructional columns require lateral reinforcement provide confinement with the core of the prevent premature buckling of the rebar of the closest space to either the space. Reinforcement, particularly with the effect of increasing the ductility of the concrete with the compression element of the carbon fiber wrap the steel jacket, retrofit to provide the comparable to confinement of existing structure. Steel columns located away from the region of the plastic hinging with the most detail with the development and full capacity of the section. Local flange buckling must be avoided with the closed space stiffeners and indicate for the blast resistant design case in the concrete encasement steel section. Reinforced concrete beam section requires resistance to the positive and negative bending motion in addition to the effect of the load rehearsal. Rebound doubly and reinforced section possess greater ductility, significantly reinforced counterpart steam mill beams may be constructed composite with the concrete deck order to increase the ultimate capacity of the section. However, the increase is not equally affected both positive and negative moments for the most complete composite slab. May break to the top of the flange steel section. Both flanges is vulnerable and buckling. Addressing blast and seismic goals of the may be achieved with the consideration of the many of the same of the building attributed using similar design detailed solution. Understanding the difference between the two load phenomena, fixed for the structure and the performance requirements is essential in order to select the implementing appropriate choice of achieving the project goals. See the design, building, and resisting explosive threats. Paid additional to discussion on the topic. Relevant codes and standards, high complexity security system designs neither codified or nor regulated. The universal gold standard apply to all public and private sector buildings. However, the many of the private agencies, including military, civil, the private sector organization, develop specifically security design criteria. The channel may be flexible and change with the response with the emerging threats. Executive order. Agency security order, amendment of the executive order, other actions in connection with the transfer of a certain function of the security, homeland security, planning federal sustainability next decade, delegation chair of the interagency security committee of the chief security officer, delegation of the chair of the interagency security committee, assistant secretary of the instructional protection, homeland security, presidential and critical infrastructure identification, prioritization, protection, and homeland security presidential directive policy with a common identification stamp of the federal employee contractors and national continuity policy. Department of Homeland, Interagency Security, Community Policy Standards and Best Practices, Federal Standards, Guidelines, and then others in private sector guidelines, additional resources, websites, security councils, centers, organizations, and associations, trade magazines, training courses, tools, and others. Part 3, Threat, Vulnerability, and At-Risk Assessment Analysis. And cut the tape there.